Well, hey, I'd like to welcome everybody to watching this video here. Appreciate Coach Bandstra allowing me to come on and talk one of my favorite topics on how to break down opponents. Once again, my name is Matt Bartley. I'm an assistant coach, currently coach linebackers, and I'm a scouting coordinator. My background's kind of been from 1992 to 97. I was an assistant coach at Springfield North, started as a freshman coach, and worked my way up to eventually the co-defensive coordinator and special teams coordinator. In 1998, I moved to an assistant job at Dublin Scioto High School in just a suburb of Columbus. In 99 to 2002, I got hired as the offensive coordinator at Miami Trace High School. A guy named Jeff Conroy gave me my first shot to go really coordinate on the other side of the ball. And in 2003, I moved to Xenia, and I started off as a freshman coach there. And then I became a linebacker coach, eventually became the defensive coordinator, and I took over duties 4 years ago as the scouting coordinator. Now, when we talk about scouting, some of the things that you have to think about are the first for me when I go through this process is we talk about terminology. So, and I'll get into this and kind of where my thought processes went, but you got to figure out what terminology are you going to use? Because, I've been on, a bunch, I worked for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different head coaches, and nobody I've worked for used the same terminology. And you have to figure out how are you going to get the information to the players. But one of the things that, you've got to get done first is figure out what terminology you're going to use. The next thing, I'm a complete film rat. People will tell you that I will watch an absurd amount of film. I will get film off of TV. This year with COVID and games being on YouTube, you can take film off of YouTube. So you got to figure out how much film are you going to use in a breakdown. There is a point of, how much is too much, but, are you going to use all the film you have? Are you going to look for teams that run similar schemes? We were a 3-4 defense. So how much did we use of a team that was using an even front? If it was the only film we had to use it. But I believe that coaches will attack defenses differently. So you have to plan on those things. And, I'll talk about offensive breakdown at the end. You got to find some ways of finding film, games that a team uses similar formations. Or do you just want to use the last 3? Some schools will just use the last 3 and figure out, hey, this is what they've done lately. Now, the next thing you got to think about is when will the breakdown get done? Saturdays after JV games, is everybody going to stay and you're going to work until, 9 or 10, and then come back a Sunday and finish anything up? Are you going to work as a group that way, or are you going to do it on your own? I think with the advancement of technology, it has really helped us kind of get away from having to meet on Saturdays and Sundays. As long as you're working with guys who kind of know what they're doing, it's a lot better. And it gives yourself some more freedom to go out and work on your own. And I need a quiet environment. And then you have to decide who's responsible for what. I have a chart made up for that I'll come over. And then the last thing you got to think about is how you're going to get your information out to your players. The advancement of Hudl is unbelievable. Our kids today have access to more film than I probably did in the 4 years of high school as a player. So you have to figure out how are kids going to get stuff and when they're going to get it. This is the chart I was talking about. So one of the things we did was each coach became an expert in a situation or an area. So for me, I was the 1st and 10, and FPOS is first play of a series. I was that expert. So I knew when it was 1st and 10, like, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is what they've shown the tendency to do. And so it was really on me to make sure we had that done. I was also in charge. This is when I was a defensive coordinator. I was in charge of developing the script for inside drill, for 7-on-7, for team. If we were going to put plays down, we were going to make sure they were scripted. I was also, for breakdown, responsible for surface, which I'll cover, the offensive play, the formation, the backfield, and the play direction. I designed all the run cards. I was in charge of knowing what their 2-point plays were if they had any, and I would compile the scouting report and data for all of that. Now, everybody had a portion of the scouting report. I think what that does is it gives ownership to your coaches, and it allows them to make suggestions based on things that they actually know, not from watching, one series of like, hey, they always do this. I always love it when the young guys like, hey, I was watching the game against, Smith High School, and I saw that, they always do this. And I'm like, not really. So, it's one of those things that needs to get corrected, and it's an easy way to teach the young guys how to do something. Our D-line coach was our third and fourth expert. So third and short, he was our expert in that, just because his guys were going to have to be the ones to maybe make a play. A corners coach, had all those things down there. Third and 8+ was a huge one. So third and long was where he was going to be an expert. He also had to chart play after turnovers because we wanted to know, hey, this is what they do on play after turnovers. Sometimes you'll find guys that are going to try to take their shot immediately, especially in like on the plus side of the field. Like if there's a turnover on the 45, maybe this coach likes to throw 4 verts. Well, then you better call your defense ready to try to defend that. The other thing that he does is he does our tackling chart, which we give points for different things. And I like it, one person doing it, because that way the standard never changes. What I think a guy, loafing to the ball is, he may not. And so it's a lot better when you have one person doing those things. Our outside linebacker guy was a 2nd and 7+ expert. So he would know, like, hey, we stopped him. We have him off schedule. We go do those things. And then our safeties coach was the last one. He did all of our pass cards. He drew them up, and I felt like it was easier if he did that because he was using his terminology. Once again, it goes down to terminology. Like, I don't care what you call it. As long as the kids know what's coming, we're going to be good to go. He was also in charge of our trick plays, our coverage checks, and where he was really helpful is he was the red zone expert. So he knew, and the red zone moves, I think, based on the team. Some red zones, everybody thinks it's a 20+. Other people, it may start out as far as the plus 28. I think we had one year where they went into a red zone package at the plus 28. So I think if you break it up and it's not just one person in charge of it all, it gives ownership. It gets them more of an ability to intelligently talk about a team, and it allows them to come up with legitimate ways to combat another team. I always told them, all of us together as a defensive staff are smarter than any one of us alone. And as a young defensive coordinator, I didn't really understand that. And I didn't act like that. And it wasn't until late in my career as a defensive coordinator that I figured out, like, hey, these young guys, they do have some good ideas once you get them able to talk about things. Now, I'm going to put a shameless plug in here, but I'm also going to put a caveat on it. Hudl Assist is the best thing ever. When I first started coaching in 1992 with Mickey Hannon, and then when Mickey left in 1994, I moved up to the varsity staff with Jim Dimitroff. We had to do video breakdown off of VHS tape. And we were doing it all by hand. And, we're making cards and we're trying to put, punch holes. So you knew, like, hey, every time this tight end's in this spot, these are the plays that you get. Hudl Assist has gone and taken the film, and they break down these columns on a breakdown. ODK, offensive formation, backfield, hash, all these things. Now, the caveat I'm going to put on there, you still as a coach have to go in and check certain things. Like for me, I'm in charge of, if you look at this one, I'm in charge of formation, backfield, and play direction, play and surface. Well, they don't do offensive play and they don't do surface, and I'll get to that. But offensive formation is one of the ones that I am struggling with getting Hudl to understand, that it does matter where people are lined up. A 3-by-1 formation, when the number 2 receiver or number 3 receiver is on the line of scrimmage, is different than a 3-by-1 formation where number 1 is on the line. It limits those things. Backfield is another one. You have to constantly check it. And what it does is people are like, well, you don't know the information. I'm like, actually, I probably know the information better than you do, because I'm spending more time watching the film and I'm watching certain situations than having to go in and type it all in. So, if you can afford Hudl Assist at all, please, 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 at least give it an attempt, and let them do the work for you, and then go in and see how they can get things done. But like I said, some of it is, there are some problems, and Hudl Assist knows that they have some issues and they are working on them. But, if I don't have to put down 1st and 10, 13 times in a game because they've done it, that's more time for me to spend actually trying to find the tendencies of a team. Now, these are the columns that we do on our own. Okay, so surface, I'll explain in a minute. Offensive play, that's another terminology thing. You have to decide, are you going to call the off-tackle power play? Are you going to call it power, or is it going to be 26 power? And then we're like, well, was he really in the 6 hole? Was he more in the 4 hole? So you have to say, okay, it's 24 power. Well, what you do is you're taking that data and you're separating it even more. For me, offensive plays are about concepts. The off-tackle power play is the off-tackle power play. You can have, I don't care if it's the 2-back running it, the 1-back running, the 3-back running, it doesn't matter to me. Off-tackle power is off-tackle power. Are there times that things hit inside or hit wide? Yes. But you should know that the concept, the blocking concept, the blocking scheme it's all the same concept. Pass zone is another one that is interesting. My corners coach did that one. And what he does is he has a little grid. Now, Hudl has, that comes up in one of their reports, but he goes in and he puts it on the one that he wants, because he's very specific about, hey, this is where that ball got thrown to, and it's just what he gets tired of Hudl being wrong all the time, so he goes and puts it in zone. PATO is play after turnover. It's when you find the shot. FPOS is first play of a series. Coaches, especially in high school, you will find out that they have specific starters, things that they want to look for, that that they're going to do. I knew we played a wing T team, guy named Steve Chanel, who's a Hall of Famer here in Ohio. I knew Steve was going to start off almost every series running buck sweep, but he was going to give you a different formation each time that he ran it, because he's trying to figure out, like, his kids can run buck sweep in whatever formation they want to line up. He's trying to get you to figure out, how can I know what that team's how they're going to line up to. Like, I promise you, first play of a game is going to be unbalanced into the boundary. And if he can get it to where it's on his hash, the hash closest to him, you're definitely going to see unbalanced into the boundary, because he's going to see exactly what he needs to see. Bench is another one that we chart. Bench is, our coaches doing things to or away from their bench. We happened to stumble upon this by accident. We're watching film, and I'm like, hey, man, it seems like he never throws the ball to the field. And we ended up finding out that the coach was actually only throwing the ball when it was on the hash to his bench. If it was on the hash away from him, he was not going to throw into the opposing boundary, and he wasn't definitely going to throw to the field. But if that ball got onto his hash, on his sideline, you could bet that that's when a pass was going to happen, and he was going to throw it in the boundary. A couple reasons. One, he gets to see it a little bit better. Two, after I talked to him about it, he's like, yeah, because that way I could work the official and say whether or not it was pass interference or was it complete or incomplete. We also chart field and boundary. So are they running plays to the field? Or are they running plays to the boundary? And so really we go from having to do all those other ones. We end up having to really chart 8, and there's 5 of us. So each of us really only have to do one of these extra ones. I'm in charge of 2, but everybody else is usually in charge of just one of them. And the last one we do is the ball carrier. I think ball carrier is important to chart because you can go back and you can pull down and distance, and you can put down distance and ball carrier. So if it's 3rd and 10, how many times does their wide receiver get it? Now, the best part of this is, well, I can figure that out doing it. Yeah, but now I don't really have to go through all of that by myself. I don't have to do the down and distance. I get to work on more of these tendencies where I can figure out the ball carrier. Hey, if it's 3rd and short, hey, number 7 is going to get the ball, and they're usually like handing it to him on a zone read play. So those are the things that you get to do. And now it's what works for us. Now, the ones I'm going to spend a little time today is where I think one of the most unique things that we do is we attack an offensive formation, and I chart what surface they attack. Now, how you call offense formations can skew data. If you don't call, I'll give you an example here in a minute. If you don't call the same formation, whether it's left strength or right strength, if they're 2 different names, you may not find the data that you're really looking for. So, you got to come up with a way of finding a way to make sure that you're getting the information you need to best prepare your kids and get them the information they need. Now, my system may not work for you, but it works for my thought process. I was in charge of the scouting report, and I taught the coaches, when I say this is what I mean. And they can then get it to their kids, and we're all going to eventually use the same thought processes. We're going to use the same terminology. The hardest part for this is when kids know their offensive formation is pro, and pro is right, but con is left. Well, when all of a sudden we change it to where it's pro, whether it's right or left, that takes the kids some getting used to, but eventually they understand it. And that's where surface comes in. For us, a pro surface is a tight end and a flanker. I don't care if it's left or right. So you've got to find a system that works for you and your situation. Find what makes sense to you, and you'll be able to find the numbers that will help you win. It truly will. So here's a perfect example. The formation on the top, we used to call Cobra. I don't know why it was called Cobra. That's what we called it. So it was, quarterback, 2 backs in the backfield, twins right, open left, okay, or split in right. Well, that's Cobra to the right. To the left, we called that Mustang. And, the kids were like, well, Coach, when they're in Cobra, they do this. Well, yeah, but what you may find out is in Cobra, they're running a certain play. But in Mustang, when you're trying to get the data out, because Mustang, they didn't do it as much, it doesn't show up as one of their top plays. So what we did is, and I'll be honest, I stole this idea from Mike Elko when he was the defensive coordinator at Bowling Green. He's now the defensive coordinator at Texas A&M. So he definitely made an upgrade from Bowling Green to Texas A&M. Now he made some stops along the way, but he did make some serious impacts. So what we did was we call these surfaces. So if you see here on the top, this is a twin surface. We ignore the backfield. We look at the twin surface. Well, guess what? Even though this was Cobra and this was Mustang, there's still a twin surface out here. And then what we decided to was we were going to call just a split in open surface. We called it open. So every formation we call has 2 names. it's twins. This, for example, this becomes twins open. So when we say twins open, the kids know, well, either I'm going to have a twin surface or I'm an open surface, and they know how to count receivers. And you will find things. And I have a couple examples here of things we found this year. So this is the report we ran for twins open. When the team was attacking a twin side, it was 68% run. So when you have the twins in front of you, you have to be thinking run to my players. But here's where it happens when it's open. So back to this single receiver side, when you're back here to this open, it was 90% run. So the kids knew even more like, oh, we're for sure going to be getting a run. So if that corner's back here, that corner back here is defending this open side. He knows, hey, if I get something, I'm going to get a run to me. They haven't. I think they threw one pass. Was that? Yeah. No, it was two passes. So they had thrown two passes. This was like game 5 maybe. So it might have been game 5. And this team had thrown two passes in 5 games to an open surface in twins open. But here's what happens. The next thing I do is it's the same team, and I pull their thing. I do it just by surface. So when they're in twins, it goes to 52% pass. But I will tell you this, the kids know that most of these passes were when it was double twins. So if you get two of the same formation, like twins, people say doubles. Well, we just say double twins, so our kids know, hey, it's the same on both sides. If it's a pro on each side, it's double pro. But here's what's nice. When they were attacking the open side in all formations, so that could have been pro open, twins open, slot open, trips open. The kids know, hey, look, if I'm on an open side, this is all formations. This is what I'm telling you. When coaches have formation tendencies and you usually find them on a surface, it's 83% run. Those kids know, like, hey, if I have an open surface, I need to think run first. And what I do is, so we may have a formation. So like I'll give you, we'll go back to this formation right here. So this is twins open. If he motions from the backfield out here and it becomes trips for us, even though the offensive formation says twins open, I put in the surface trips. That way, when I see something like that and I see a formation, and this one did have it, so here it's twins open, if they ended up in trips, which they only did twice in the 5 games, they only motioned to trips twice. It was 50-50. But my kids know, like, hey, sometimes they'll have a tendency in trips to be, passing the ball more, or, you could actually, dive down and maybe find out in trips they run the bubble. So that's, when I talk about formation and surface tendencies, those are the things I'm talking about. We come up with this, and we'll hand this to kids as a test, and we'll tell them, hey, twins, they're running ice and read option, and then they got to go in and they'll tell us how many times they ran each play, and then we'll have them draw. Sometimes we'll have them draw the top 4 pass plays to each surface. So it's just another way for your kids to kind of get through your thought process, and the more they know, the better they're going to perform. Now, other data we look for, I talked about all these, bench, you can find plays running their bench, field boundary, first play of a series, pass zones. You will find out on the pass zone, if you do that one, where guys aren't throwing the ball. Like there were a couple teams this year that would not throw the ball in the middle of the field for anything. So guess what we did? We didn't defend the middle on pass downs. If it was 3rd and 15 and they had a high percentage of passes, we vacated the middle of the field because they weren't throwing it there. So why should you defend something that's not there? The play after turnover, all that stuff I've already previously covered. Now, that I will go in depth of, if somebody wants to know more about that with me, I will, and I just used the formation and surface. You can do backfield. There are backfield tendencies. And if you want, especially with an H-back, where he is, we found one, they call it plus minus. I will go into as much of that as you guys want to talk about. Just my contact information is going to be at the end here. Please feel free to, contact me, because I love talking about scouting, because it's the chess match of the game. And one of the things we can do is, I'll learn things. I picked up 4 or 5 things last clinic season before we got shut down for COVID. I picked up a couple more things that we used this year, and I said, I'll be daggone if they weren't right about it. Now, one of the other things that, as an offensive coordinator and the scouting coordinator, I did a little bit of this for our offense, because our offense for the past 4 years had been so unique, and it's the triple option, and you don't really know how people are going to play you until you see them, because there's so many ways to attack the triple. But, when I was an offensive coordinator, one of the things I would do is I would scout our fronts. I would find the people who are playing formations like us, and I would see what they're doing. Now, the end zone view is key to this, because can you really tell the difference between a 2 and a 3? And can you tell the difference between a 4-eye and a 4? Sometimes you got to have that end zone view. So the one thing I would do for our offense in the offseason, I would go and I would number so I would pull up all of our formations, all of our double slot formations, and I would see how a team played our double slot. And then what I did is I used the numbering system, but I always went from the defense's left to their right. And that was just because that way the kids, if I call out 5-1-3, the kids knew the left end is in a 5, the left tackle's in a 1, the right tackle's in a 3, and then always, and then unless there was something odd on the backside, he would line up just like the first guy did. So it'd be like 5-1-3. You end up with 2 5s, a 1, and a 3. And what it does is it helps you move your scout team around and not have to waste time getting them set up, because you're just yelling out a numbering system to them. And it always goes left for right. And like I said, look for similar formations for that. Stunts. When you're scouting, you'll find schools that have stunts. We knew we played a school, Hebron Lakewood, and we knew that their coach was going to, once you crossed the plus 45, that there was a pressure coming. So we took advantage of that because of our scouting. So what we did, we just had it charted like, hey, they didn't blitz, but as soon as you crossed the 45, you knew a pressure was coming. So come up with a system. The one I like is field inside backer and boundary inside backer. That says fib. That should say bib. So the field inside backer, and then you tag what gap they went to. So like for example, the thing I use here is you just say boundary inside backer A. Well, we just call it Biba. And the kids, you just tell the kids, hey, Biba this, or, Bib B, and now that boundary guy's going to go to the B. Like I said, you can check blitz tendencies versus formation, down distance, field position. I already given that example. Coverage. Figure out what coverage they're playing to certain formations. What are they playing with key situations? Like if it's 3rd and 4, are they going to play man and try to bring pressure? What are they playing with blitzes is the next one. If it's 3rd and 15, are you going to get a cover 4? If it's late in the game and they're up, are you going to get 2 man? But you have to scout those things. Other things in an offensive scouting breakdown is who's their dude. Like, every defense has got a game record, if they're any good at all. So one of the things you want to know is, can you get him where you want him? Can you formationally align him? Can you motion him? Maybe it's a DB and, he's always on your number 1 receiver and he always goes to your number 1 receiver. He takes away everybody's number 1 receiver. Okay, great. What happens if you move your number 1 receiver into the slot and you put your slot receiver outside of it? Is he going to cover your number 1 receiver? You have to find that. The next thing you got to do is, who are they hiding? Who's the superintendent's grandson? And can you get him where you want him and attack him? Maybe they have a stud defensive end that always goes to the tight end. Well, and their weak end always plays away. Well, what happens if you trade your tight end? Well, maybe you put your tight end into the boundary. You get that stud defensive end to go over there. If your tight end trades over, are they going to move? Because if they move, then all you do is you just make it look like it's a trade and it's really motion. And as soon as those two guys get in the middle, snap the ball. What do they do well? Does it take away something that you do? Do you have an answer? You know, some of the wing T guys talk about an if-then. I think it's the best thing ever. I think it's if-then. Most offenses should have an if-then. If we do this and they take it away, then we do that, right? And what do they not do well? Is there something they don't do well? Take advantage of it. Figure out what you can do. And, you know, what do you have in the toolbox? You know, make sure you have enough tools in the toolbox. Guys, I appreciate you taking time to listen to me. My email there's on the screen. You can contact me through that. You can contact me through Twitter. You listen to my podcast. It's on my YouTube, which you can search for Game Wreckers and Slobber Knockers. I just love to talk ball. So if you have a unique idea that maybe you do for scouting and it's helped you kind of come up with some things, share it with me. I will share all of my surface, what I call my surfaces, and I'll show you like how our kids learned, you know, well, it's quads pro. Well, that's an empty formation, but it's double tight. But now you got to cover 5 receivers wide, you know, so it's just different. So, guys, I appreciate it and appreciate you taking time and listening. Thanks.